You can join us live for our next BookFunnel webinar. Check out the link in the description for more details. We hope to see you there.
Turbocharging your newsletter swaps. Let's dive in here. We're about 5 minutes past. I think everybody who's going to be here should be here. Here's what we're going to cover today. So we're going to talk, first of all, for those of you who don't know, what is a newsletter swap? What are we talking about, right? For those of you who might not be familiar with them, we will go over what they are, some of the fundamentals of swaps, and then ways that you can share them effectively. We will be showing some examples on the dashboard, and actually I'll be showing some examples of some other things as well that aren't on the BookFunnel dashboard, some techniques that you can use. So we will also have time for Q&A at the end. If you have questions or anything, put those in the Zoom chat, and we will address those questions in the Zoom chat at the end. So if you have any questions about anything that we cover, because we might miss something, it's bound to happen, we will get to those at the end. And that's where we have plenty of time to go through whatever questions you might have. So for starters, what are newsletter swaps, right? What are they? So newsletter swaps are one-to-one cross-promotional opportunities that you can find directly on the BookFunnel swaps board. So you can find an author in your genre, and you're going to cross-promote with them. You're going to share their book, and they're going to share yours, right? Right. And so you're sharing that author's book on an agreed-upon date. That's part of setting up the swap. Right? There's a date maybe that they've selected, if they are the one who created the swap, or if you're requesting it and you're going to be sharing a swap on a certain date. But it needs to be an equal exchange, right? So each of you are going to get exposure to the other's mailing list. You're going to be sharing their book. They're going to be sharing yours. That's the idea. That's how it works. I know some authors will, when they maybe they're new to BookFunnel swaps, why would I want to share another author's book with my newsletter? It's my newsletter, after all. These are my readers. And if you feel that way, I totally understand. Maybe newsletter swaps aren't for you. That's fine. But the reason why you'd want to do newsletter swaps is, well, typically they're free, right? It's an easy way for you to get exposure to other authors in your genre. And without, you're just arranging this with the other author. This is some free advertising is the idea, right? For those of you who are doing this on a budget, that might be one of the attractive reasons to do newsletter swaps. The other thing is that if you're a good match with that author in terms of your genre and subgenre, their readers are probably, fairly engaged. Right? If you're both science fiction authors, for example, there should be some good overlap. You're aiming at a target, right? That is a good fit for your books, right? This is why you want to be careful about which books you choose to swap with, right? If you write science fiction, you probably don't want to swap with a romance author, generally, unless you write science fiction romance, but right, just to give you an idea. Now, author swaps use your existing BookFunnel landing pages. And so for this reason, you could use an email collection page on BookFunnel. This would help you grow your mailing list if you used an email collection page, or you could use a BookFunnel sales landing page. And this means that readers who participate in the swap, they click on it, they're going to be able to then go and purchase your book, right, through the links that are on your BookFunnel sales landing page. Right? So they can be used to grow your list or boost sales, both, right? And you can arrange these as you want, right? For those who are familiar with BookFunnel group promos are, well, they're a group cross promotion. And so you have one landing page with a bunch of books on it from all the authors that have joined, and everybody shares that. And that's great. The group promo, not knocking group promos, they're great. But sometimes you want something more targeted, and that's what a newsletter swap is. And it lets you choose, okay, yeah, I'm going to use this email collection page or this sales landing page, what have you. And you can be more targeted about how you go about sharing your swaps, which is something I recommend you do. All right. The first thing that you should do when you're looking to swap with another author is look at their book cover. Make sure that if your two book covers were side by side, do they look like they belong side by side? That's a good indicator that they're a good candidate for you to swap with. So some of the fundamentals here of swaps to get some of these basic ideas out of the way. First, you want to make sure you plan ahead when you're building your newsletter and set aside slots for newsletter swaps. You're going to have to share these on specific dates, right? You're going to promise to the author, I'm going to share it on this date, that sort of thing. This is really easy to do if you send your newsletter on a certain schedule already, right? If you send your newsletter on a schedule, then it's going to be much easier for you to say, oh yeah, I'm sending my newsletter every Friday, and I can put a swap in there, maybe one or two swaps in on Friday each week, and build it that way. If you send your newsletter a little more irregularly, this might be a little trickier, and you might have to kind of plan things ahead. It's really easy if your newsletter is consistent, though, and you send either on a specific day. Excuse me, maybe you send your newsletter once a week in some cases. For those who send less frequently, maybe you send on the first week of the month or the second or whatever you happen to do, right? In that case, make sure you're consistent. Whatever your sending frequency is, make sure you are consistent. That makes it easier for you to plan ahead and know where you're going to slot in those swaps. Because the one of the worst things you could do is sign up for a whole bunch of swaps, arrange a whole bunch of swaps with authors, and not know when you're going to share them. You just kind of picked random dates, and now you've got to send newsletters on these weird dates and times that don't fit into your schedule, right? So try to get everything to line up. I recommend if you're sending your newsletter weekly, pick a certain day of the week that you're going to send it. If you're sending it monthly, pick a specific week and a specific day of that week too. So if it's the first Friday of the month, for example, I'm just using Friday as an example, but whatever day and week works for you. Sharing is caring, right? BookFunnel swaps run on sharing. You're sharing the link to that author's book. They're doing the same. So you need to do your part when you're doing swaps. It's not the case that you can just join BookFunnel swaps and, swap with authors and not share their book. Well, I mean, I suppose you could, but what's going to happen is you have a reputation on BookFunnel in BookFunnel swaps that's based on your average number of clicks. And so if you sign up for a whole bunch of swaps with authors and you don't share any of them, authors are going to be able to see your history. They're going to be able to see your reputation, the average number of clicks that you bring to a swap, and they'll be able to decide whether or not they want to swap with you. And it's completely socially enforced. BookFunnel doesn't step in and stop somebody from swapping with you, but most of the time somebody's going to see, they look through your history, and I'd be like, you know what? I'm not sure I want to swap with this person because their click average is very low because they're not sharing, right? You have to do your part. So that's the first thing to understand. Part of swaps is that each author participating has to contribute by sharing that with your newsletter on the agreed upon date or around the agreed upon date, right? So that it functions and everything works as it should, right? You would want the other author to do the same thing for you, so do the same thing for them. Sharing is really fundamental to the whole to swaps as a whole, right? And at the same time, if an author requests a swap from you and you don't feel comfortable swapping with them because of their reputation, feel free to not accept that swap. You do not have to, right? Nobody is forcing you to. That is fine, right? You can be as choosy as you want in that department when it comes to that. There are also three different kinds of swaps. I know we talked about how you could use an email sign-up page or a sales landing page, but in this case, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about our exclusives, features, and mentions. And an exclusive swap is generally going to feature that book, well, exclusively. So you would send an email to your newsletter that only has that book in it. You're showing them, hey, this is maybe the email is even about just that book. You might have some of your own links in that email, but the idea with an exclusive is that this is showcasing another author's book. Typically, you're going to want them to do the same thing in return. right? You're going to want them to do an exclusive for you. That's usually a fair trade. Maybe that's not always how you arrange it, but an exclusive is kind of a big deal, right, in that respect. You're kind of getting the opportunity to almost like take over that author's newsletter for a day. Think of it that way, right? That's usually something I recommend you do as an equal trade, and arrange some of that ahead of time with the other author so that it's effective. Maybe you have some verbiage or some graphics you can provide them to share. They can do the same. Right? But a lot of your swaps are not going to be exclusives. And I don't necessarily recommend that you do lots of exclusives either. That should maybe be something that you do occasionally, maybe once a month at most. It's not something that I would recommend you do all the time, unless you have the systems in place to do it. But most of the swaps that you're going to do are going to be what are called features and mentions. So unlike an exclusive, features and mentions do not have to be shared by themselves. That means that you could have 2 or 3 swaps that you're doing on the same date, and you are sharing with your readers on that same date. A feature should be prominent, right? But it doesn't have to be by itself. It might be above the other books that you're doing swaps for that day. A mention can be less prominent. And in some cases, means it's lower down, right, on the list, right? Maybe in your newsletter, it's a little farther on down, or maybe it is the image you use is not as large. It's up to interpretation a little bit. But mentions are generally understood to be less prominent, right, but easier to share. And in some ways, easier to share multiples. Right? So when somebody is looking to set up a mention swap with you, they're probably not expecting to get as many clicks as they would from a feature, or especially an exclusive. If someone is wanting to do an exclusive swap with you, they're going to be expecting to get a fair number of clicks. Whereas with a mention, they might, 15, 20 clicks, something like that, might be just fine with them. Because again, they're probably going to be doing the same thing for you in return in most cases. Right? So understanding the difference between exclusives, features, and mentions is important. You want to know what it is you are asking for from the other author. If you are setting up a swap, make that clear. And sometimes it's easier, in my opinion, to look for, what it is you're wanting to do. Maybe you're wanting to do more mentions and just have a few books that you mention in your newsletter each time you send it out. Or maybe you are wanting to do like a monthly exclusive because your readers appreciate that. Look for that on the swaps board. We'll show the swaps board a little later too, and how you can find these things as well. So I'll make sure that we go to the swaps board and I'll show you where all this stuff lives and how you can find that. But it's important to know the difference between these two things and kind of have an idea for what your strategy is. I think most authors are going to fall into the range of doing features and mentions primarily, and the occasional exclusive is probably what I think is the best fit for most authors, but it might vary for you. Right? So when we're talking about sharing your swaps effectively, a few things here that will, again, the reason why we want to share effectively, meaning we maximize the number of clicks that the swap link gets. Right? We're sharing a link to that other author's book. We want to maximize the number of clicks that book gets, because that allows us to do more swaps, and that means more authors will be sharing our books in return. Right? So first off, always use the BookFunnel link that BookFunnel provides you on the swap details page. This is the link to the other author's book. The swap link on the dashboard is the only link you should share. Do not change it and do not replace it. Why I say this is that sometimes an author will swap with you. Maybe they request to swap with you, or maybe you request to swap with them. And then maybe after the fact, they're like, oh, you know what? I'd rather you share this book. Here's the link. Can you share this link instead? Problem is, the tracking part of the link is not on that new link that they gave you. And so if you share that link instead, you will not be getting any credit for the clicks that you generate if you share a different link. So don't replace it. If they're insisting, no, I'd rather you share this book instead, then it's probably best to cancel the swap and arrange it again with the book they'd rather you share. As that's what you should do, right? And don't make any modifications to the link. And there is a tracking portion at the end of the link. You don't want to delete that. You don't want to change anything to it. Just copy it directly from the dashboard, right? And take it from there. Use the book's cover as the graphic in your newsletter, right? You have permission, right? Just grab their book cover. And I would recommend putting it in your newsletter with a button to go alongside of it. So the book cover, maybe some short text, a brief description. I wouldn't do anything longer than 2 sentences, and a button, and have both the image and the button pointing to the swap link for that book. Why an image and a button? It's human behavior. Some people are going to click on the image. Some people are going to click on the button. If you only had one, some of those people just wouldn't click. Right? Some people see an image by itself and they're just like, oh, this is just a book cover. Cool. And then they scroll past it, but they see a button that says, a free book, something like that, with a call to action. They're going to click the button. Some people will see the cover and they'll click it just fine. Right. Also, you wouldn't want to have a button by itself with no image, right? The image helps kind of signal to people, this is what you're getting when you click the button. So use them together. You can embed a link into text as well as a hyperlink. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that. But generally speaking, an image and a button, pair those together when you're sharing a swap. Right? Don't worry too much about social media when you're sharing your swaps. Clicks from social media will be few and far between. Most social media platforms these days in particular are not very fond of somebody sharing a link to an external site that's going to bounce them somewhere else. They want you to stay on the platform so they can run more ads to you. If they want you to click on an external link, it should be one in an ad, because that's when Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and YouTube, that's where they make their money. So there are times where it can work. And if you have maybe built up a large following on Facebook, for example, and you share stuff and it gets some good engagement, then sure, you can throw them up there. But I wouldn't worry about it, and I wouldn't make it your primary way of sharing your newsletter swaps. It can seem like really easy, low-hanging fruit because, oh, I can just throw this up on Facebook and I don't have to add it to my newsletter, right? Well, you can do that. If you get some good engagement, maybe it's fine. Maybe it works just fine. I would say there's a difference, though. We talked about exclusives, features, and mentions. Posting a swap on your Facebook page is probably the equivalent of a mention in most cases. This would be the equivalent of a mention in your newsletter, for example. It wouldn't be considered an exclusive because the level of traffic and the level of engagement is not going to be the same. So I would imagine, unless you've got a really big social media presence, which you might, and that's great, right? But there's also differences in how people engage with social media compared to your newsletters. So in our experience, it results in fewer clicks when you share exclusively on social media, sometimes no clicks at all. A lot of the times, the posts that you make on like your Facebook page are not discoverable unless somebody goes to your page in a lot of cases. And this can result in fewer clicks. That means your average is lower, and then fewer authors are going to want to swap with you. And I think you see where I'm going with that, right? So that's why I say, don't worry about social media, right? There are some exceptions to that, but generally for most authors, don't worry about sharing on social media, right? How you share is actually what matters the most in a lot of cases. So authors will sometimes ask, how many swaps should I do at any given time? Right? My list size is this. How many swaps should I do? I send my newsletter every week. How does all of those things? Those actually matter less than how you share. And when I say how, right, are the swaps that you're sharing at the very bottom of the email that goes out to your subscribers? One thing you should be aware of is that a lot of your subscribers are going to use Gmail. Most of them are going to open the emails you send on their phone, on a mobile device. And in the Gmail app, emails that are really long get cut off at a certain point. And Gmail will only show so much of the content, and then it will cut it off and it'll put a link to where they can go and click and view it externally in their browser. Most people, if that's the case, if the email you send gets cut off, most people are not going to do that. And so they're going to scroll and they're going to get to the bottom and they're going to see where Gmail cuts it off and they're going to be done. And if they didn't see anything in there that they were looking for, they're going to leave, right? So that's important to know. This can sometimes happen with other email clients as well, but Gmail is the most common. And yes, most people are going to be opening your emails on their phone, on mobile. That's going to be the vast majority of your subscribers. So you need to organize your newsletter effectively to make sure you fit all that information above that cutoff, right? Which includes your swaps. That can be kind of hard, especially if you've got a lot of information. Maybe you've got a reader magnet of your own in there, and you've got a sale on one of your books, and you've got an upcoming release that you have ARCs for that people can sign up for. And then you have a promo that you're doing, and then your swaps are down, and now it's all invisible and they can't see it, right? I have a secret technique that you can use, we'll talk about here in a moment, but that's important to note, right? So how are you sharing them? Where are they in your newsletter? Do you share them on a schedule? Kind of talked about this earlier, but this is setting expectations for your subscribers. Your subscribers should expect to, right, get those swaps or promos, whatever you're happening to share on a regular schedule. It sets their expectation. They're primed for it. So they know, oh, every Friday is this, right? Or the first Friday of the month is when they share those free books. I myself try to email my list multiple times a week because I'm insane. But I email them multiple times a week. They know Friday is Free Books Friday. That's what I call it. You have permission to use that if you want, right? And every Friday, I send them links to promos and swaps. That's how I do it. Now, you might do it differently. Maybe you send your newsletter once a month. And so you just have to put that stuff at the bottom and have your other content there. We actually have a webinar coming up next week, specifically about organizing an effective newsletter that's going to talk about some things in depth with that. And so I recommend that you go sign up for that webinar for next week. If you haven't done so already, because that's going to directly apply to this swaps and so forth, but just your newsletter in general. Because I think the fact that Gmail cuts that off there, it's a big deal. And a lot of authors don't know that. And you might have lots of information you're trying to pack in there. We're going to be talking about some strategies in that webinar specifically about just making your newsletter more effective. And with a more effective newsletter, that will also help make your swaps more effective. Right? So the one thing, this is the secret weapon I'm going to share with you all today. You might be saying, gee, if Gmail's going to cut it off and I send my newsletter monthly, how can I even do that many swaps? How do I make this work? Well, what I suggest you do, if you're feeling ambitious, this is maybe not for everybody, but if you are feeling ambitious, is to, oh, what do we have here? There we go. If you're feeling ambitious, let me get back here. Where am I? Apologies, folks. Technical difficulties. There we go. Build a swaps page. This is a landing page that is dedicated for sharing your swaps. Can work for promos too. I have an example here on the right. This is my own swaps page. And in this case, this is an external landing page. This is not in my newsletter. And each one of these covers and images has a link to a swap, or in some cases, a promo with a button. And this allows me to streamline my newsletter. If you do this, you're sharing one link to one page. You're sending them to a landing page. And that's where all the swaps live, is on that landing page. So you don't have to fit them all in your newsletter. If you're doing 5 swaps that are active at one time, which they might not all be getting shared on the same date, and that's because swaps last for 30 days. So if May 1st is your swap date, there's 30 days where that swap is active, and you can still get clicks that will count towards your reputation. So you can leave them there for a while, right? There's no rush. But you have one link to share to one place where you can put all your swaps in it. Let's use that example. You have 5 swaps that are active at one time. All 5 of them can be there. And you're going to share a link to that page instead. And then the clicks on that landing page will still count as long as you're using the correct tracking link. All of that counts. Readers who aren't interested in swaps can ignore them this way. If they're in your newsletter and they're not concerned about the swaps, they're not concerned about that stuff, it's easier to ignore because there's not this whole list of other books that aren't yours. If they're there for your books and they're wanting to engage with you directly and whatever it is you're doing, right, and they're not interested in that stuff, they can ignore it because now you just have one link, probably with one image, one button that takes them there, and they know, oh yeah, that's that thing. I'm not interested in that. And they can skip over it. Sometimes authors will join a bunch of promos, participate in a lot of swaps, and cram all that into their newsletter, and a reader opens it up and is like, what is this? I don't even see this author's books in here. What's going on? And they unsubscribe because it's confusing. And so this helps you avoid that. You're sending them somewhere else. Some of your readers, I'll be honest with you folks, some of your readers might be subscribed to your newsletter just for the free books. I'm not trying to hurt your feelings, right? I've done a survey with my own subscribers, and there's a good chunk of them that's why they're there, right? I'm here because you share free books every Friday. That's why I'm on your list. Your books are cool too, I guess, but that's that's why I'm here. And that's fine. It's okay to have those readers on your mailing list. It's going to happen, right? Those freebie seekers, right? That's how they get labeled. But they're not bad to have on your list as long as you serve them what they want and you do it in a way where it doesn't take away from your newsletter, right? So if you do it this way, the readers who want to see this stuff know where it is, and the readers who don't want to see it can just ignore it. Readers behave differently on a landing page than they do in their email inbox too, is what I've noticed. They're going to click more if you send them over to another landing page. And we want more clicks on our swaps because if we get more clicks on our swaps, we can do more swaps. And if we can do more swaps, more authors are sharing our book, right? To kind of bring that back again. Why you want your swaps to be effective. More authors are going to be sharing your book, right? Readers are more likely to click when they're on a landing page. When they open your email, right? Consider this. They've got their phone. A notification pops up from you. They open up Gmail. They're reading the email. They scroll through. They see some different books in there, and it's all just too much. It's overwhelming. And there's a lot of information to absorb really fast. And so they close it, or they delete the email, or maybe they even unsubscribe and they're like, oh, I'm done. But if you do this consistently and they have a button that says click here for free books. That's just an example. You can use whatever you want. Now they know, oh, I'm clicking here for free books. You're telling them what they're doing. That call to action signals to them, okay, now I am going here to do this. That's very important psychologically for that behavior. If you want them to click on swaps, that's what I recommend. And then, like I mentioned this, swaps can be left up for 30 days. They can be active for 30 days and you can leave them up, which means that clicks have time to trickle in. You don't have to worry about, getting all those clicks on the swap date. You have time. You have 30 days. And realistically, you actually have more than 30 days. Because let's say that you set up a swap with myself, right, on July 1st. That's 2 months from now. But we agree to it today, right? So I send you a swap request on BookFunnel today. You accept it. It's actually live immediately, which means there's 2 whole months before the start date. And then 30 days after that, that makes it in about 90 days, approximately, right, where that link is active and will actually track clicks that whole time. A little secret there for you, right? So you can leave it up there if you schedule them in advance for some time, and there's less pressure on you to get it, shared on a specific date or feature it really prominently in your newsletter, right? So this is why a swaps page is probably the number one secret weapon for turbocharging your author swaps, your newsletter swaps. It lets you keep all of them separate from your newsletter, streamlines the whole process. It's my number one recommendation. This is a page. I'm going to actually show you all this page in just a moment. I'm going to actually take you there live to the page. And the page is something I built using MailerLite. You can do it with your mailing list service. Most mailing list services have the option for you to build a landing page, right? This doesn't work with a BookFunnel bundle page, though it's a possibility in the future, right? It's something that we might work on, but you can build this externally, and there's some reasons why you might want to do it that way instead, right? Like adding these buttons here and so forth, right, to make it more effective. Totally fine, right? And so this is something that I'm actually going to show you here in just a little bit. So let me actually switch my screen sharing here. And let's come over to the swaps board first. Let's take a look at that. There we go. Swaps, good. Okay, make sure I'm sharing the right window here. So we talked about some things like mentions and features and exclusives and what is all of this. So here we are on the swaps board. If you wanted to find a swap, let's say you're looking in, let's say you're looking, science fiction and fantasy is what I'm familiar with. So, right, first thing, you want to pick the dates, right? And maybe, right, we're looking here over the next 2 months, but maybe I want to look a little bit farther out. Maybe I want to look ahead to August, for example. Totally fine. Like I said, if you arrange a swap in advance, some authors will set a swap. I personally, when I create a swap for authors to find, I create them for 52 weeks, right, in advance, right, a whole year. So I have swaps that, if you're in science fiction, I should say, right, you could find on the dashboard, right, all the way through this year into next year, right, for example. So you can look at a wide window. The audience, this matters too. This is actually something we didn't touch on, so I should mention this. Are you a KU author? Is that specifically what you're looking for? You want to find a KU focused audience? Well, select KU, right? Are you a wide author and you're selling on multiple platforms and maybe you want to find other wide authors? Select wide. And if it doesn't matter so much, this is especially the case if you're doing a swap using an email collection page. Maybe it doesn't matter too much to you whether they're KU or wide. You can just leave it at any, and that's fine. What are you swapping? Are you swapping with a sales landing page? Again, here I have an example of a sales landing page here. We've got links to all these stores where this book is available, right? If you're wanting to share a sales landing page, right, you can always create a swap or request that the author share that book. But in this case, when you choose this option, what you're doing is you're selecting what you want to share. So do you want to share just sign up pages? Maybe you only want to share free books. You would want to select sign up pages. Are you okay with sharing links to sales landing pages? Well, then you can look for sales landing pages, or maybe that's exclusively what you want to share for one reason or the other. And again, you can just leave it at any if you're okay with, swapping with either one. The type of media, we do have ebooks and audiobooks here. If you wanted to search for audio, not a whole lot of audio swaps here on the dashboard, right? As you can see, but there are plenty of ebook ones. And hey, just because someone is swapping audio and you're swapping an ebook doesn't mean you can't swap with each other, right? It doesn't have to be exclusive in that way. Now, your genre, again, let's look here. We can scroll through all of the BookFunnel genres here, but we'll find science fiction. Whoops, I got to spell it right, don't I? Right. We'll just go with science fiction and fantasy, science fiction. And now I can see, okay, here's all of these authors. By the way, uh, I'm not trying to point anybody out or single anybody out here. Any authors I select, just whoever came up. So if one of these authors happens to be in the Zoom call today, say hi in the chat. And that's fine. But for example, here, this author, if I wanted to swap with them, I can click and look at what they're offering. So now I'm able to see the books that they're offering swaps with. So they've got a number of books to choose from. And I might see some of these, I'm not sure that my readers would click on that, but this one looks good. I think my readers might actually be interested in this one. I can even preview the landing page and see what that landing page looks like. Make sure that, they did a good job with it. Maybe you're concerned that the landing page, maybe there's a typo or something like that, right? You can look at that ahead of time. You can also see what they're asking for, some of the details of the swap and their recent swap history. So I can see, okay, these are the recent swaps that they did, right? And how many clicks they got. Now, when I scroll down here, I'm going to have to scroll a ways because they've got a number of books. I can request this swap with this author and select which one of their books do I want to swap with. I can choose from this drop down. And it will also tell me, is it a sales swap? Is it a sign up swap? You'll want to pay attention to all of that. When will you share this? So it's asking for you to pick the date. When you're going to share it, you could pick any date, of course. Even if their date is at a later time, you can pick whenever you want. And what kind of placement are you offering? This is where you select exclusive, feature, or mention, right? And then what is your primary audience? A mix of KU and wide, mostly KU, or mostly wide. You have those options there. Here we can select which of our books we want them to share. So for example, on this demo account, we have Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. You'll see here, it's saying this book doesn't have any landing pages. That gives me the option to go create one. But if I do have one that does have, let's see, I think this one should have a landing page. There we go. I can select that landing page there from that dropdown. And I can leave any other comments that I want here in the swap request. Sometimes there might be additional questions that they want me to answer, or you to answer. And so that information might be there, some additional questions and so forth, right? Now, I should mention, usually it will say here, wants to swap offering a feature. So this is saying they are offering a feature. So they're going to feature our book. Usually, if you want to reciprocate, if they're offering a feature and you're requesting a swap with them, I would request a feature in return. If they're offering a mention, request a mention in return. If they're offering an exclusive, do the same. We can sort through this table as well. So you can sort the date. If you wanted to look at it, it's sorted by date already. You can sort by the author. Maybe you want to look for a particular author to swap with them multiple times, or their share average, right? For example, you can look at their share average. Oh, hey, look at this guy. He's right there. That happens to be me, right? Right. So you could find the authors by their share average if you wanted to, right? And then also by the spot that they have available. So for example, these are exclusives here. that Tom is offering. We've got some features in here. Those look like they might even be mine. We have mentions available as well. So whatever placement you're looking for, maybe you're looking for mentions because that's what you're wanting to offer, right? I would look for the same thing you're wanting to offer, and again, try to reciprocate and offer the same thing, right? They're asking for a feature, try to offer a feature. If they're asking for a mention, offer a mention, and so forth, right? So that's really key to making your swaps effective. One thing that can happen or can go wrong is where you're maybe expecting to get more results from a swap, right? If you're expecting to have your book featured or be exclusive, but the swap was a mention as to what they were offering, right? You'll want to make sure you pay attention to that carefully so you know, okay, it was a mention or it's a mention. I'm not going to get necessarily a whole bunch of clicks from this one, but it's going to get mentioned. It's going to get a few clicks. I'm going to offer the same thing in return. I think that's an important piece, right? Because it's not always a feel-good moment when you do your part and you generate a lot of clicks for the other author, and maybe they don't for you. It happens from time to time. Generally, most authors do contribute and do their part, but sometimes things like that happen. And the number one way to avoid that is to make sure you are reciprocating. You're offering a mention for a mention, a feature for a feature, or what have you. And if you have an author that you find does do a good job of sharing, and you want to share with them in the future, look them up, go hunt them down, and schedule some swaps with them going forward. And you even can reach out to them by email. Once you've arranged a swap with them, you do get their access to their contact information. So you can keep in touch that way as well. And maybe say, hey, do you want to arrange some swaps like over the course of the next year or something that we can do? You can do that as well. So that's an effective tool. If you do find an author who you swap well with, for example. So I did promise, didn't I, that we were going to look at the swaps page. Let's see if I can pull it up. I guess I didn't have to stop sharing that. I could have just pulled it up that way, but oh well. Okay, so here is this swaps page that I have built. It has promos on here as well, but this is an example. Again, I have some social sharing icons on here just for fun if they want to do that. I do have a sign up link here at the top as well. Again, I built this through MailerLite is what I did, but you could use any other landing page building tool. And so they can sign up through this link, excuse me, and be able to then to join my list as well directly from this page. Because in some cases, I do have it set up so readers will sometimes come here without being subscribers to my list because I have other ways of promoting this page too. Then I have some featured books here at the top. These are some of my swaps, and so I do put them up at the top of the list of books. And then I have some promos in here, as well as some swaps kind of intermixed together. And that way readers will scroll through here. I also have some sales landing pages and so forth, or sales promos rather, that are down here. And then at the very bottom, I do have some of my own stuff. So these are some of my free books that readers can find. And again, a link to my primary reader magnet and some more information here as well. So I have some other stuff at the very bottom in case they stumble upon it. So it's also serving me as well, just in case, because again, I have readers coming here from other places too. Right? So this is very simple to set up with MailerLite. You're just uploading photos of the covers, dragging and dropping is pretty simple in MailerLite. And then when you click on any of these, it's going to take you over to that promo. I do need to update this page. It is ready for another update since it's after the first of the month. I share on Fridays. So that's something that I will be updating soon. Some of the links on here might no longer be active, which is something I do have a disclaimer for that somewhere on this page as well. But this is that swaps page I was talking about. Again, I use this for promos and swaps, and you can do that. But if you're just doing this for swaps, it could even be very simple. Mine is very involved. I've got a lot of stuff on here. Yours doesn't have to be this complicated, right? Right. I kind of have to set the example for everybody, right? I'm this like, lead author support guy. I'm supposed to know what I'm talking about, right? But you might not want to do this much. Maybe you just want to have, like I said, a handful of swaps that you're doing at any one time. And then it's fairly easy to manage. You only have like 4 or 5 images on here that you've got to change out every now and then. And with swaps, the nice thing is you don't have to change them out, all the time. It's something you can leave up there and maybe change it, at the beginning of the month or something like that, and keep it simple. It's also really easy to take a page like this and point ads to it if you wanted to. And you might be thinking, why would I want to spend money promoting other people's books? That sounds kind of weird. Why would I want to do that? Well, maybe you don't want this in your newsletter. Maybe you want this completely separate from that. You still want those authors to share your books, but you want to keep this outside of your newsletter. You need a way to drive traffic to it. Driving ads to a page like this, even at a low budget, can still generate clicks for you. And then you don't have to put it in your newsletter. And it's all organized in one nice, neat place. So that's something else. Another possibility for those of you thinking about it. Not everybody's going to want to do that. I totally understand. Right? You might be thinking, I've got a tight enough ad budget as it is for my own books. Totally understand. It was just a suggestion, right? You don't have to do everything that I'm suggesting in this case. But this is the when I changed to this method, it kind of revolutionized my newsletter. And so if you're the type of person who's maybe struggled with sharing promos and swaps in your newsletter and fitting all that in with the other content you're trying to share in your newsletter, which is your newsletter, right? BookFunnel isn't expecting to take over your newsletter. Right? That's not what we're expecting. If you're struggling with that, this is what I would recommend you do, is something like this. Because again, to go back to those bullet points that I was mentioning before, it streamlines the whole process. I'm sending you out of the email to go here, where you're more likely to click and engage with this. And if you're not interested in these free books, there's more content in the newsletter. If you have blog posts or a new reader magnet, or you're putting out a call to action for a new arc, I'm going to be doing that here in the next couple days myself, because I have an upcoming release. So I'm going to have some ARC copies available. I'm going to fit all of that stuff in there, and the promos and swaps are going to be there too. And it's not going to take away from that. It's just going to be another element of my newsletter. So I think I've talked enough at this point. And so I'm ready for your questions. Kelly and Emma are both here with me today. In case I didn't introduce them earlier, Kelly and Emma are two of our other author support specialists here at BookFunnel. And so they were probably in the Zoom chat with you all as well. Maybe I forgot to preface that at the beginning. I hope I didn't. I hope I explained that. But they have compiled your questions into a nice, neat list, I'm sure, and have those ready for me. So Emma, Kelly, whoever wants to start, what do the folks want to know today about swaps?
Okay. So Teresa's asking, I do newsletters, but most people only want free books, so I don't feel every book should be free. How do you figure out which newsletters are for a certain number of books? I feel I get no traction when a newsletter has 100 books on it, opinions.
So I guess the question here is, are you concerned with the other author's newsletter? Is that what it sounds like to you, Kelly? That's how I'm.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It was
Yeah.
like, well, and not only that, but if like, if you have like a large amount of
Yes. Yes.
it's not just features and mentions, but it's a lot of books.
Right. Right. So number one thing I would say when you're looking to swap with another author, look at what you are getting from them. Is it going to be a mention? Well, your expectations should be a little bit lower, right? Than if it is a feature. or if it is an exclusive, obviously. And communicate with the other author and see, okay, how is my book going to be shared? You know, I would also recommend joining their newsletter to see, right, what how they share and see what it looks like. But generally speaking, I think the one thing from what it sounds like is you may also be wanting to swap a sales page, if I'm interpreting that correctly, from your question. And generally speaking, a sales page, a sales swap, the same thing goes with sales promos. They do tend to get fewer clicks. Yes, readers do tend to seek out free books more so than paid books. That is true. And so if you are wanting to swap with other authors and you're wanting them to share your sales landing page, then it is, excuse me, it is a little bit more of an uphill climb in that respect. And so that's something to be aware of. The biggest thing, though, and I think I'll go back to this, is it matters how that author is sharing as well. If an author is just putting the swaps in their newsletter, join their newsletter, see how many they share at a time. Are they doing, is your book one in a list of 25 mentions that might not get clicked on? Yeah, that's a valid point. But are they doing something else, right, to drive traffic there? Something like this. I'm not the first person to come up with this idea, so I'm not going to claim credit for it. But are they doing something else? And their click average should communicate that to you as well. So look at their history, look at their swap history, look at, and we'll go back here. I'll just jump over here. So look at their recent history, look at their average, and see what it is, right? If that's the average number of clicks you can expect, and that sounds right to you, right? This is a mention, right? For example, then I would use that to inform your choice as well, whether or not you swap with that author. And you may not want to swap with that author, and that's fine, right? But try to get as much information you can up front by looking at this information first. When you do agree to swap with them, communicate with them a little bit about how they share, right? Ask them some questions if you have some concerns, and then also join their newsletter, right? I join a lot of authors' newsletters because I like to see what other authors are doing. It's something I highly recommend you do, even outside of the context of swaps. Be on other authors' newsletters, right? Join their newsletters because they're going to do some things you're going to be like, oh yeah, I should be doing that. That looks brilliant, right? That's what I'd recommend you do. And if an author is sharing lots of books, that's fine, as long as those books are getting clicks. That's the way I put it. If an author has 100 swaps that they're doing, if those swaps are getting clicks, or they're getting a certain number of clicks, maybe their average is 20, but it's a mention, and you're okay with getting 20 clicks just for sharing their book, if that seems like a good deal to you, go for it. If their share average is too low, you're not comfortable with it, then I wouldn't swap with that author. And that's fine. That's the thing, is you have the choice of who to swap with, right, as well. So if someone doesn't seem like a good fit for you or what you're looking for, I would swap with somebody else. And that's totally fine. And that might even apply to me. Maybe you feel that way about me. Maybe you don't want your book to be on a landing page like that. Maybe you'd rather it be in the author's newsletter. I'm probably not the author for you to swap with, and that's totally fine. I'm not offended by that either. So there's a lot of decision making that goes into that, which is understandable. Hopefully that addresses the question, but if not, feel free to clarify in the chat as well.
All righty. Yeah, I'm gonna fully admit that I'm in the author knowledge thingy and I've lost track of where we're at.
Oh,
Kelly,
well,
your
Helen,
sister out.
Kelly, Kelly, go ahead and throw me the next one. That's fine.
Okay. So just a general question. Should you read the book before you agree to swap it? How can I recommend a book when I don't personally like it?
Yep. So you can preview in some cases. These are sales swaps, so you can preview the landing page. You're not able to preview the book with a sales swap all the time because there may not be book files on BookFunnel in order to do so, right? But you could, for example, preview the page and see where it is. Maybe it's on Amazon and you can do the look inside and read it there. Feel free to do that. I understand in some genres and subgenres that's very important. But so, for example, if I pull up one of my own here, this is a sign up page and you can preview the book. And this takes you to the BookFunnel Cloud Reader where you can read it in here as well. So you can do that if it's a newsletter swap. On a sales swap, you can't, but you might be, like I said, go over to another one of the links on the sales page and see where it might be available. See if you can get a preview there, or even look up the author and contact them if that's very important to you. That's understandable. Do you find your spot there, Emma?
I did. I was putting some info about the difference between mentions and features into.
Oh yeah. Yep.
In case anybody wants to look at that. Carla asks, is it more or less effective to insist you both offer your books for free?
It's not I guess it depends on how you're going about it. If you only want to swap with free books, that's only what you want to do. I would recommend requesting swaps and sort by signups. So you're only seeing sign up swaps. And okay, Stephen here, I'm gonna swap with him, and he has this sign up page, and I only want to share sign up swaps. I don't want to share sales pages. I don't feel comfortable with that. Totally fine. I'd recommend requesting swaps that way, or if you post them, just make it very clear. That's totally fine. Totally fine. As to the effectiveness, it is effective in the sense that your swaps are probably going to get more clicks. Free books tend to get more clicks than books that aren't free. So that is, in that sense, more effective, but more effective for you as the author. There's a difference between, say, a reader magnet and a 99-cent loss leader. I think you're going to get fewer conversions on the 99-cent loss leader, just using that as an example, but you're probably going to get a higher percentage of those readers who actually read that loss leader and then go on to read more books in the series. Whereas with a reader magnet, a lot of readers will claim all the free books, and they've got to read those books at some point, and that might take them a while to get around to your book, and in some cases. If you're talking about it in that sense, I think that's a choice you have to make, right? Whether or not you want your book to be, a reader magnet like that, to be the primary thing that you're promoting, or is it just one piece of the puzzle, that sort of thing. So, but if you only want to share free books because that's what you feel comfortable with, stick with that. That's no problem.
Okay, so Vash is asking, how do you phrase things in your newsletter so that they know that they're getting free books and featured paid books swaps together in your newsletter? Yeah. Are they on the same sales landing page, or wait, together on the sales landing page? I mean,
right. So,
yeah.
So for example, these are swaps. This says free book. If it's a promo, I use the verbiage of view all books in this giveaway, because it's implying it's more than just this one book. Some of these other ones here, so this one is free. Sometimes I'll say, check it out if it's not a free book, right? For example. And then I have a separate section down here that is for my sales promos, and I refer to these as offers. So view all offers, for example, right? And this is also an interesting promo that I did last month for review copies as well. So So the verbiage I would use if it's not a free book is an offer or a deal, or refer to it in that way if you want to. And then if you're sending them to a promo, I would say view all books in this giveaway, or view all offers, view all deals, something like that. If it's a swap, it's pretty easy because the verbiage is like, this is a free book, claim your copy, or something like that. I hope that makes sense. And if you're doing this in your newsletter, you could do it very similarly to this as well.
All right, Julianne asks, is there a function on BookFunnel that shows how many swaps you're doing so that others requesting a spot know there's limited space or you're full?
Yes. So here again, we'll use this swap as an example. So if I'm going to request a swap, well, first of all, I should back up. I'm getting ahead of myself. So we can see this author's swaps listed here, right? And these are all the dates that this author has selected to swap with, right? So these are all available, right? Essentially, this is telling you just that information here. So if I were coming to find your swaps, this is what I would see. I would see it's available on this date or this date, right? And if I were sorting by date, I would see a mix of different things. I would see all the swaps by date. And so authors have the ability to choose how they want to filter it, right? Once that date is full, it's not going to be available to view on the swaps board. So if this one were taken, for example, the 15th, it would disappear from the swaps board and it wouldn't appear on there anymore, right? So nobody would be able to find it. If you needed to cancel that, and that sometimes happens, you can get that date added back on, and that's easy to do, right, in that respect. Here, when an author clicks to request a swap with you, they're looking at just this one date, but they can click here to view more dates, and this allows them to see all of the dates for this particular book or books, and see when they're available. So they can look at it this way too. Not everybody's going to do that. So they might not click here and look at these individual dates in this list. Typically, they're going to be looking at a specific date like this, either sorting by date or sorting by share average. That might be what they're doing. It just depends.
Okay. Carla's asking, all of these swaps involve ebooks, not print, right? I write middle grade and print books are preferred. Can BookFunnel help me swap a print book?
So if in that case, what you would do if you're going to do a print book is you'd want to use a sales landing page, because this can link to any store where that print book is available. So if you are selling it through your own store or print on demand through Amazon or another service, Book Vault, something like that, you would use a sales landing page and then link to it that way. In this big button here can link wherever you want it to go. So that's what I would do. Otherwise, I think I talked about this in the orientation we did just before this webinar. So if this is the same person asking kind of a question along these lines, a printable PDF sample as an email sign-up page could also be something that you could do if the book is really best consumed in physical media, right? So maybe there's a worksheet involved, or maybe it's a coloring book. And I'm not sure exactly what the case might be here, but you could do a PDF that is printable. And if you didn't want to give the whole thing away, you could do a sample download or something like that. But a PDF, they would be able to download it and they would be able to print it off at home. In that case, if you're using more of a print media type of, if you sell more print, I guess for a novel, it probably makes sense to offer it as an ebook, if I'm being honest. Even if you do primarily do print, as maybe that's the majority of your business is print, the majority of your sales are for your print books. If it can be made into an ebook format, even as just a sample, and you want to build a newsletter that way, I recommend you do that if it can be done that way. Might not always be able to, depending on what it is it might not always translate, I suppose, to an ebook, which is fair. But if it can, then I would recommend it.
All right. Vash asks, what do you consider a low budget for ads to a page of this type?
What do I consider a $1 a day? Which you can do with a Facebook boosted post. You can do $1 a day. And which you simply do by setting the budget to like $30 and set it to run for 30 days. And then it will spend $1 a day. Facebook boosted posts are not the end all be all of ads. They're not like, you get a lot more tools when you set up an actual ad through Facebook than doing a boosted post. But a boosted post is simple. And if you're new to advertising on Facebook, it is what I would recommend to get started with. Because you have lots of control over the budget. You can keep the budget very low. The minimum with a dedicated ad on Facebook is $5 a day. And that's some money for some folks, understandably, right? You may not want to spend that much money yet. And you just want to kind of get the feel for ads and learn how it works and learn how to write good ad copy, learn what images are effective, all of that, then yes, I would do that. And start with a boosted post on Facebook for a low budget. There might be other platforms that you're familiar with. I'm primarily familiar with Facebook, but you might be familiar with other platforms where you have control over a tighter budget and that sort of thing. And that's great. I can't speak to those other platforms, but if you're using Facebook, yeah, I would do a boosted post. $1 a day is fine. You can technically do less, I think, if you play with the numbers, right? The total budget and the number of days that it runs. Facebook lets you do that kind of however you want, I'm pretty sure. So you could spend as little as you wanted to in a given day. But I'd say $1 a day is pretty good. And $30, just skip going to Starbucks a few times and you'll be able to afford that. I'm not giving you financial advice, but or trying to tease anybody about their caffeine habits either. I understand, but if you are on a low budget, that is my number one recommendation. And I think a small budget like that can still be effective for things like this, where $1 a day, depending on how you set it up and depending on how good your ad copy is and how compelling the images are and how clearly the images demonstrate this is what you're getting when you click this button. If you do that well, you can still get, a handful to a dozen clicks a day for $1, which is not nothing. It's not nothing. So I'm actually experimenting with it, and I might have more to say on that in the near future. But right now, that's as much as I can say.
Okay, so Catherine is asking, can we advertise for ARC readers to download our book for reviewing?
Yes. You can absolutely do that. And there's a number of ways that you could do that as well. So the delivery method is the big thing. That's how are you going to deliver the ARC? A lot of authors swear by advertising their ARCs, and that's the most effective way that they've found for some authors. And so you can do that. The question is just, how are you going to deliver them is the question. Are you pointing that ad at an email sign-up page and they just sign up and get the book? Well, you're going to have to follow up with them through probably some sort of email automation to remind them to read the book, to leave the review on the release date and all that stuff. There's some setup involved. So you have to be prepared for that. But if you are, maybe you're going to send a certified mail campaign, and so they're signing up through an opt-in form and joining a list, and then they get an ARC on a later date. You have to communicate that information. or if you are pointing them to another platform where they're going to be managed on that platform, you can do that as well, right? So something like Booksprout or something like that, you could point ads there, and you could absolutely do that. BookFunnel wouldn't necessarily be involved with that part of it, but yes, there are authors who do that, and that is effective for some authors, for sure.
All right. The next series of questions will be specifically about your swap landing page, Jack.
Okay. I figured there would be a lot.
All right. So why did you use a MailerLite landing page and not a page on your website?
Oh, on my own website? I'm actually working on that. My website is hosted through MailerLite too. So, and that I do that for simplicity's sake. It's all in one place for me. That's why I do it that way. Everything's on MailerLite. I sign into one dashboard and I can edit my website and I can edit my newsletter. You don't have to do it that way. I'm not recommending it for everybody, but it's all in one place and it's easy, and that's what I needed. And so that's why I did that. It's a landing page for now, but it's expanded, and I do actually have plans to turn it into its own website, is the route that I'm going to take. So, but you could make it a page on your own website. Absolutely. That's just the way I did it when I created it. And I didn't have at the time I created it, I didn't have my website on MailerLite yet. And so otherwise I probably would have done so, and made it a page there. But there's no reason why you wouldn't, or couldn't, or shouldn't. You absolutely could. And in fact, it'd be easy enough for them to navigate over to your website. In my defense, though, I do have a link to my website up here. Not very prominent, as you can tell, but there's definitely some optimizing that can be done here. This is by no means, the end all be all. Check back with me in a few months, and maybe it'll be even better. This is what I'm trying to say. So, but good question. Yeah, you could absolutely do it that way.
Okay. I don't know if it was me or you. Sorry, I don't know. I think it was Juliana's next. So Jack, do all of these books offered on your page also get a mention in your newsletter?
No. So I share them to a page, and I believe my swaps should say that they're shared on a landing page instead of in my newsletter. But effectively, they kind of do. So I have a graphic that I share in my newsletter that points to that page along with a button. So it's still in my newsletter. I guess I shouldn't be so quick to say no. It is in my newsletter. It's just pointing them to the landing page, and the landing page is the tool where they go through. But if you're going to do that, it would probably be worth it, when you're creating a swap right here. If we're going to add a new swap, I would put that here in the details of the swap, right? And provide a link to that page, even be like, I share my swaps in my newsletter, but I point it to this landing page and you can view it here. That's where your book is going to be shared. And even drop that in the comments. When you're requesting a swap with another author, drop the link in there and say, this is where your book is going to be shared. I point my newsletter to this page each week, or whenever I share. So just communicate that with the author if you're going to do that. But yeah, so it's not explicitly in my newsletter, but it kind of is.
Right.
But the end result is that it's more effective anyway, because more people actually wind up clicking on it, is what I found. And so more clicks. I don't know if an author ever complained about it. That's what I would say to them, is if it's on the landing page, more people are going to click on it, and that's good for you. So. At least in my case, in my experience and what I've seen. Might not always be the case for everybody, but.
Oh, this
Okay.
is from Kay that just popped up, Kelly.
Okay.
Following up on Jack.
What's
By the
that?
way, I should mention, if you have sent me a direct message at all in the Zoom chat, it might be buried. So I might not be able to find it. So if instead of sending a direct message to me, make sure that when you go into the chat, you are sending it to everyone in the meeting, right?
Okay. The question from Kay in the chat, is there a correlation between clicks from your partner swaps and the size of their lists, or can you ask for a list size?
There is not always a correlation. In fact, I have seen authors who have 10,000 plus subscribers who have an average of less than 10 clicks. So it does not correlate. You can ask for that information. It does not always equate to results. I see Julianne in the chat followed up just saying, thanks, Jack. I just was curious how to qualify the newsletter obligation with the page. Thanks for the clarification. Yes, I will say, I'll note this. This method of using a landing page is BookFunnel sanctioned, right? This is if like Damon thought this was a cool idea. So this is totally fine for you to do as far as BookFunnel is concerned. You're still sharing it in your newsletter. And really, even if you were to, I know I talked about social media and probably not to make it your primary way of sharing, but if you had some other way that wasn't technically your newsletter, like you put it on a website and ran ads to it, but you got enough clicks, we're going to be okay with that too. We're not going to be maybe an author won't like that and they won't want to swap with you, but that's fine. Anyway, keep going.
Okay, I just found another question I think got a little bit buried. So Anne Catherine is asking, I need to have a new book or have a new book coming out soon. I need ARC readers. How do I advertise for those readers? I have a mailing list to remind them, but I need to know how to invite new readers to become ARC readers to review. Where do I advertise my
Yes.
need for ARC readers on BookFunnel?
Right. So, a couple things that you can do if we're talking explicitly about advertising, right? You're wanting to advertise an ARC, then I would recommend Facebook, excuse me, as an advertising platform. There's I don't have experience with it directly, but I know things like I think Goodreads might have an option, and possibly BookBub ads might be like you're targeting readers maybe. And so those might be some options you'd want to look at. But Facebook is usually fine. You have to know Facebook ads and know how to have a good solid ad copy and images in order for the ad to be effective. And what I would recommend doing if you are in a position where you're kind of like, I don't want to say desperate, right? But kind of desperate, right? For ARC readers. Like you need them and you put the word out to your newsletter and nobody signed up, or only a few people have signed up for the ARC. And you're like, sheesh, I want to have like 20 reviews and I only have 10 people who've signed up and half of them are going to not leave a review right away. And you're doing the math and you're crunching the numbers and you're falling short. My suggestion is to cast the widest net you possibly can when you're in that position. And then over time, because I'm assuming this is not going to be your final release, I assume you'll have other releases in the future. Over time, you can start to build a dedicated core group of readers who are consistent about writing reviews. And that's your true core team. And you'll get more of those over time. But if you're in a position where you don't have that yet, you don't have those readers that you can rely on, like a list of 100 readers that you know are 70% of the time going to give you a review when you ask for it. Instead, what I would recommend that you do is cast the widest net possible. Give that ARC out to as many readers as possible, whether that's by running ads to it or just giving it away to everybody on your newsletter. You're like, and follow up with them, knowing that a large percentage of them are not going to write a review. But if that's your goal and that's the position you're in, that's my recommendation. Right? And then over time, you can start to find and identify those readers that are very consistent, and you'll gather more of those over time. And then your strategy can shift, and you don't have to cast that wide net and basically give your arc away for free. And because I know some authors do worry, like, I want people to buy the book, but I also, when it comes out, but I also want reviews for it. And so it's kind of, those two seem to contradict each other. But the reality is that if you're in a position where you need the reviews more so than you need the sales, do what's going to get you more reviews for now. And then in time, your strategy can shift. So if I were advertising an arc on Facebook and I just wanted to maximize the number of reviews that I could get, and I don't have a dedicated team that I can rely on to get me the number of reviews I want, it's going to be a free book. And you're gonna be like, hey, you get this arc for free. And I'd make sure you have some lead time to advertise it ahead of the release date so you can get enough people to claim the free book, and then just follow up with them. Follow up with them. They sign up for it, have an automation sequence in place, or email them on a certain date and say, hey, hope you're enjoying the arc so far. If your review is ready, you can submit it in advance here. Remember, this is the release date, however you want to organize it, right? But that would be what I would try to do. Cast as wide a net as possible. And that means you could put that arc in BookFunnel promos and put it out there in swaps. But know that the vast majority of readers with that method, the vast majority of readers are not going to review the book. And that's kind of something you have to accept if that's the method you're going to take, right? But it's a numbers game. That's the strategy I would recommend if that's the position you're in. If you're new, right? Is just to get it out there, get it into as many people's hands as possible. Some of them are going to take the free arc and they're never going to review it. And that is what it is. But you're going to get some who will. You're going to get some that will. And yeah, that you can use that in all sorts of different methods. Paid advertising, put it out to your newsletter, put it in do swaps, do BookFunnel promos, that sort of thing with that arc leading up to the release date. You can definitely do that.
Okay, Shanda's asking, is there a place to check all the promos and swaps in one place? Somehow I missed a mention to mention one of the promos I entered. I didn't see it, and as I was preparing my newsletter, I will send an extra newsletter to include it.
Yeah, so author swaps and promos are separate. So if you're looking at your swaps, you'll find them under your swaps. They'll be listed here. Your group promos are going to be listed under your promos. And so they'll be the promos you're in right here. And if that blue bar is actually like going all the way here to this side, that means this is an active promo. And then you can click to view the promo details or just hover over it to see and get the links that way. There is not one place to find all of those links you have to share.
Wouldn't it be the calendar?
The calendar, yes, you can hop up here and let's see, would it be, I think here's a, whoops. Do I have a promo? Yep. So you can get the tracking link from here. So actually, now that I think about it, yes, Kelly's right. Kelly's right. Yes. The calendar, and that's a blind spot for me maybe because I tend not to use that, but yes, you could copy the tracking link right from here. So yes, the calendar. Good. Hey, see, even I learn new things. And I knew that. I'm still going to say that I learned it though because I didn't put two and two together. I knew all that, but yes, that would be one place that you could go. But otherwise, they're separate on your dashboard. So.
Don't feel bad, Jack. I had that question ruminating in my head for a little bit longer than you did. So
no, but there's so many tools on BookFunnel too that it's like, oh, that thing doesn't do that. Oh, but this thing does. And yes, even for the experts like me. So there's always some new things you can piece together. Definitely.
Trying to find, I think there's other, I got tagged. Have you ever tried to put a reader magnet for sale on Amazon and use it as an arc as well on BookFunnel promos? and in Facebook ads.
Okay, there's a lot going on there. Okay,
That's a little bit of an extra, yeah, side
yes.
quest.
So if your book is for sale on Amazon, my first question is, are you enrolled in KDP Select? If you're enrolled in KDP Select, you don't want to be giving it away openly in that way. You would want to give it away for review. You can do that, and generally that's considered okay. Some authors have gotten into trouble with Jeff and Amazon because they've given away review copies. And I suspect in the cases where that has happened, it is because they did something like this, where they're like, this is an email collection page. Claim your free ARC copy. It's your free review copy. Get it here and join my mailing list. And what they're really doing is just giving it away as a reader magnet. And they're doing it openly. It should not be available open on the internet. If your book is already for sale on Amazon and is exclusive through KDP Select, Kindle Unlimited, it needs to be a situation where people probably sign up and then you vet them and then send the book to them using either, I would recommend BookFunnel certified mail, which delivers them a unique download link that's only for them, or by adding it to their BookFunnel library using bulk delivery. And then they can read it in their BookFunnel library instead. And it's done more discreetly that way. And there's not a public landing page out there, right, that where people can download the book for free, basically, which Amazon is going to see as a violation of their terms. If you are wanting to advertise that, I would have a landing page, probably not a BookFunnel landing page, because you're going to want to collect signups and emails without giving the book away. So a third-party landing page where they can sign up to receive a review copy, but they don't get it. They have to be vetted first through whatever process you want, right? Which can be as simple as they have an email that I can deliver a book to. It doesn't have to be super in depth. I would advertise to that type of landing page. And then you collect readers on a list, you vet them, you deliver the book to them discreetly and directly, and it's not available out in the open for everybody. That is
If I add to that too, a couple of ways to protect yourself. I will on my book covers put a big red stamp from like Canva that says ARC copy, and then in your file I will make up an ID number and also put a big, this is an advanced review copy not intended for. So if Amazon does, which you know, it's clearly, hey Amazon, this is an ARC. I mean,
yes, or this is a review copy. Yes, that sort of thing. There's lots of different things that you can do, but I suspect when people have gotten in trouble for that, and don't take my word for it, you want to proceed with caution. If you do not want to get, disciplined or banned on Amazon, then I would avoid this. But there are plenty of authors who do it, and there's the one thing about Amazon is the 10% sample. That used to be like the law of the land, right? And everybody said that. And then that verbiage disappeared from Amazon's website.
as it will do.
And some people have gotten in trouble for it and have gotten banned. But again, who knows what they were doing? We don't know what they were doing. So we don't know what it was that got them into trouble. So I would be cautious if you're doing anything like that. But like people have asked Amazon representatives, is it okay to give away review copies? I'm not influencing the review. I'm not asking for a 5-star review. I'm not paying for reviews. Is that okay? And generally it's acceptable. Yes. I mean, there are services out there that organize that too, as well. So, and that's a thing that can be done. So it can be, you just have to be careful about how you do it in most cases. I think that's the issue. Right. So if you do get in trouble for it, you were probably doing something where you were making it too easy to get a hold of, is what I'd say. or the illusion that it's actually just a free book and you can just download it, and you're labeling it as a review copy, but that's just it's not actually what it is.
Okay, I think we worked out the last question in the chat box, so I think that's it. Am I
Really?
right? Oh, she was just asking, Eva was asking, does it have to be a swap, or if you're so inclined, can you simply use this tool to create a thriving virtual book fair on your website in the form of a swap aggregator page?
Yeah. Okay.
I think what it was is if you're just thinking about the revolving as
Yeah.
you have it, so it's like you could call it a book fair, you could have it
Oh, yeah.
revolving. You could
Absolutely.
get other authors to come in on with you. I know there's like round
Yeah.
robins, that there's kind of a similar idea.
Oh, absolutely. You could, and
Yeah,
you
that
could,
we were just chatting about that.
right. No, yeah, you could use BookFunnel swaps as like the underpinning like infrastructure, and then just have that on a website that, yeah, you treat like a book fair and you do it that way. And absolutely, you can absolutely do that. And get other authors involved. Absolutely.
Did you tell them about your trick for a long-term swap if they want to post one and just let it sit there?
Yeah, no, it's I'd recommend doing this with an author. Like, if you find you have a good experience with an author in swaps, I would reach out to them about this. This is probably something you'd have to arrange ahead of time. But go to the swaps board and create a swap for like May. The date is gonna be May 1st of 2026. So like 2 years in the future. Because remember, once the swap is accepted by both authors, it's active. And that means that those swap links are active and can be shared. They will track clicks. And so you might do something with an author where you're like, hey, let's feature each other's reader magnets at the end of our own reader magnets, right? Maybe as an example. And then like you leave it there for 2 years. Or again, this virtual book fair type thing. You could put it on that page and leave it there for a long period of time, and it would collect clicks over that long period of time. So yeah, you could absolutely do that. Obviously, you'd want to make sure it's an author that is going to be consistent and reliable, somebody you probably had good experiences with in the past, in other short-term swaps. And it's kind of an out there kind of idea. It's not something that everybody's like immediately is like, oh yeah, that makes total sense, I guess. But yeah, you can do that. You just post it, set it for that date. If you wanted to put it on the swaps board and just hope that somebody sees it, you could do that too. And that'd be fine. That would be fine as well. The one thing is, you'll just want to make sure that like the dates are the same. And so that's why I'm saying you want to do it, because technically you could put it up there for like 2026, and they could choose a date that's like tomorrow if they're requesting to swap with you. So it's something you'd probably want to communicate to them in advance. That's why I'm saying that. So after thinking about that a little bit more, I realized that it could create some issues where like you're not going to share their book for 2 years, but they accidentally chose to share your book tomorrow. And that can create a situation. So, but yeah, no, that is an idea. There's lots of things you can do with swaps in that regard. And it's kind of a powerful tool if you know how to turbocharge it. To go back to the title of this.
About using that method for the Shared World collab I'm about to publish in. My mind is teetering between that method and maybe like a bundle page. So
yeah,
out and see what works. But again, yeah, it's a small group of authors. We all know each other. We know how to hunt each other around.
Right. A bundle page can work as well, and a bundle page would be ideal if there's more than 2 books. So if it's you and multiple authors, then a bundle page would make sense. And you can still have tracking links for a bundle page. So you can kind of see if everybody's contributing to the bundle page as well. So all of that information you're essentially able to do kind of the same thing, like a group swap almost in a bundle page, and everybody shares the link to the bundle page and it works out. So yes, that works too. All right. Well, that was fun. I hope you guys found this helpful. I know it's a very specific topic. I know we covered some of the basics today, and this technique, this landing page right here is like I said, I call it a secret weapon because that's kind of what it is. People hear, oh, I'm doing swaps, I'm doing newsletter promos. I've got to share those in my newsletter, and that's a lot to fit in there. And this just simplifies it and streamlines it. So I hope it was helpful, whether you're going to use it for swaps or promos. If it's not your thing, that's totally fine. And what I would just say is just limit the number of promos and swaps that you do and make sure that your clicks are consistent. If you're not getting the number of clicks that you were expecting, then don't add any more promos and swaps to your rotation and keep it simple. But if you want to do this, you just have to make sure you're driving enough traffic to it is really the big thing.
Thank you for watching. Check out these other videos from BookFunnel, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.